Hi, I'm Ethan Lee, Ely Custom Knives. So one of the knife maker tools that I make is a carbide face file guide. Now these have been pretty popular in the knife making community for quite a while, and when I set out to make these, I wanted to make as good a one as I could possibly make. So a few things about it that make it a little bit unique. First off, the carbide plates themselves are 1/8 inch thick. That's thicker than most any of them out there that I've seen. And really the more important thing is that the carbides themselves are actually silver brazed onto the base metal. Now, the reason that's important is because guys everywhere have been having problems with most of these carbide file guides that are just glued on. You tighten them any bit too tight, the base metal flexes enough and it ends up popping the carbide off because they're only glued on. They can't take much at all. Well, some other companies also countersink a screw hole on them, and I've never liked the idea that there being a hole there and everything. But being brazed on, the big two advantages is that you can grind, or you can tighten them as tight to a knife as you, I'm not going to say as tight as you want, but you can tighten them plenty tight without having to worry about these carbides coming off. They're permanently fixed. The tensile strength on this silver brazing alloy I use is almost as strong as the base metal itself. It's really some incredible stuff. They use it also on regular lathe boring tools and turning tools. The carbide tipped ones, they're brazed on, they never come off. So another important good thing about this is when you go to tighten it onto your knife and then you go to grind it, a lot of guys are grinding right to the carbide on the belt grinder, which I'm going to show you in just a second. The heat will not also make glue release and make them pop off. I got to get this stuff red hot before the solder even flows. So, and as I kind of said, taking these right up to the belt grinder, it saves a ton of time of filing. But you can file on them if you want. You don't have to use a belt grinder, but it's just a big advantage. It makes quick work out of it. Another thing is I use 5/16 dowel pins, which is bigger than most carbide file guides out there. A little more beefy pin, a little bit less flex, a little bit more stout. And another thing is that my pins are actually press fit on the back side of the carbide file guide. So a lot of them out there also, the pins just float one way or another. Then you grab your file guide and you end up losing a pin somewhere. You don't have a pin, you don't have a precise alignment. So that's really important. And another thing about them is that they can be pretty tight, but being tight is a good thing because to get a good precise guard fit, you have to have a precise tool to do it. So next, I'm going to go out and grind and demonstrate just to show you. But another thing you can use them for is also aligning it to your knife. Whenever you're grinding a bevel, you can finish off those plunges, or you can use this the whole way. It's really up to you. If I ever use them, I typically do just to finish the plunges. So if I was going to put this on a hidden tang knife, I'll line it up to where I want, and then I get them close, just snug them on each side. You don't have to be careful about tightening this in just a little bit. Don't have to be torquing them. Just tighten them up. You don't want to tighten one side faster than the other. You don't want the thing to not sit parallel, even though it really shouldn't much at all. But then after I get them snugged, now I tighten them plenty tight. You don't have to worry about it coming off. So I'm not going to move that. On this one, I actually took an impact on this to tighten this, and carbides are still perfectly fine. So you can use this to do a two-sided guard fit or even a four-sided guard fit if you desire, and I'm going to demonstrate that next. So one important thing before you do this, you're going to want to use an old belt. This is an old 60 grit Cubitron 967 that Pop sells, and the reason why is because you're about to grind right onto the carbide, and obviously you'll dull the belt. So to do this part, I grind right up against the carbide on my flat platen. I'm laying both those carbide plates completely flat against that flat platen. That's what's going to ensure that the shoulders are going to be perfectly even. So that's for a two-sided guard fit. Now if you want to do a four-sided guard fit, it's basically the same thing. So again, in this part, you're going to be doing the same thing, except with, instead of laying two carbide plates right up against the platen, you're just going to be laying one carbide plate. Oh, I had the belt tracked over just a little too far on this right here, but I've corrected it. And then same thing, just grind right up against that carbide plate, then flip it over, do the other side, and then blend it all together. So the next step is kind of an optional step, but I recommend to do it. Next step, I'm going to take it to the disc grinder and just lay these carbide plates where I'm trying to grind just perfectly up against that disc. A disc grinder is pretty flat. Belt grinder, there is a little bit of variance in, but a disc grinder, you know that you've gotten it as flat as you pretty much can get it. So that's what I'll do now. So that's how you use my file guides. You can see, got a nice crisp line all the way around this thing. A guard's gonna fit on there perfectly. And another thing to notice, the carbides, you really can't see, there's some marks where it's cleaned it a little bit, but it hadn't gotten cut at all, which is great. So if anybody has any questions on how to use these, just reach out to me on ewecustomknives.com. That's where you can find my contact info.